We really do have a great panel here when you think of it. We have the economist side, we've got the actual practical journalist, and now our next speaker will sort of blend it all together and talk a little bit about media ethics. So she's a lady who has a distinguished career in academia as well as journalism, of course, and she's written extensively and edited for the World Bank, UNESCO, and indeed many international publications. She's taught and conducted research indeed around the world, in Asia, America, and here in Europe. Please welcome, she's the co-founder and director of the Center for International Media Ethics, Melisande Middleton.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to find a place for the, oops. Great, okay, thank you. I think we've had some great presentations this morning. Jason and Edna's briefly, and Steve. Steve actually did a great job of illustrating what I'm going to try to talk about. That was a lot of energy there. I am sensing some sleepiness in the audience. And so I'd like to throw some questions out at you to start. Steve did a great job of talking about the impact of the BBC in reporting on Northern Rock and Lloyd's and how that impacted the financial crisis, or at least a part of it. That's what we work on at the Center for International Media Ethics. Our acronym is CIME, C-I-M-E. We work on how the journalist basically changes society by the decisions they make day to day. So I guess first, to wake up the sleepiness of it, please tell me some anecdotes similar to those of Northern Rock and Lloyd's. When, anytime in history, anything you can think of, a short anecdote of how the media reported on something that might have changed the financial crisis or changed the financial market. Anywhere, Asia, US. Mm-hmm. I know there's a lot of, you all have a lot of knowledge here, so.
He didn't get the picture.
Yeah?
The only thing I can think of right off the bat is the Wall Street Journal story that reported that Jimmy Cain, the head of Bear Stearns during yeah, sure, whoa. More coffee, please. Yes. Jimmy Cain, during when the first shot of the crisis was a meltdown of two hedge funds owned by Bear Stearns, and the Journal reported, and that was in the summer of 2007, and the Journal reported a few months later that during that period of crisis, Jimmy Cain had been off playing bridge and smoking pot at a tournament in. It was quite a controversial story at a tournament in Vegas or something like that. So, and that ultimately forced Jimmy Cain out. So that was the first head to roll in the financial crisis. I thought that's the first thing. I can't get that story out of my mind.
Thanks so much. Any other ideas? Okay, if not, that's fine. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, go ahead.
I can't think of any special case, but what I, in general, noticed is that the media was always way too optimistic in reporting on the crisis. And what I noticed, especially now in the last couple of months, is everybody's talking about a recovery, whereas the data speaks a completely different language. And I see a complete dissect between what is reported, which is just wishful thinking, and the actual economic data we are getting. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I think it is important to think about, as someone said earlier today, not only the role of the media in impacting society and the crisis and economics and politics and elections, but also the role of the individual journalist. So as I said, we work on, at CIME we work on how journalists, go ahead.
You know, actually, I thought it was something that was much more relevant. On Bear Stearns, there was a lot of controversy in the U.S. about whether CNBC had contributed to the downfall of Bear Stearns. That was sort of a hot topic for a while. This was in a Vanity Fair article by Brian Burroughs, but that was one where the media actually took a little blame for actually bringing down financial institutions by allegedly reporting rumors of its weakness.
Yeah, I mean, if you get thinking about it and researching on it a little bit, there's a lot of times when that may have happened in any part of the world, in any crisis in history. It happens a lot as well with elections, with political reporting. And Steve mentioned that, and the impact as well in elections in the UK following the economic issues. I don't know, you may have noticed yesterday that I sat on this side opposite the journalists when they had the debate. That was not because I was siding with PR, but because I did not want to side with the journalists. Journalists can have the best intentions in the world, but the problem with ethics is that it's essentially impossible to remain entirely objective. It is really difficult as a journalist to carry out ethical reporting, but that's something we try to work on all the time is thinking about this. And our center provides training in ethics for journalists. So I'm going to talk about something which is related to media ethics. I chose the topic called Media and the Self-Fulfilling Prophecy. So why that topic? I think this whole conference, the whole topic of the media's role in the financial crisis, I think hinges around this concept, this phenomenon of the self-fulfilling prophecy. What people believe can influence the financial market and the crisis. And obviously, if the media is reporting something, it's going to influence what people believe. So one of the reasons why I personally think the self-fulfilling prophecy is such an interesting topic and why I love economics and finance is that it's entirely determined, actually, as much as we try to study econometrics and draw graphs and put numbers into all of this, it's determined by collective psychology, by individual and collective actions that are spurred on by what we think might happen, what we're trying to predict, what our emotional relationship is to what we think is going to happen in the market. So that's why I chose this topic. I think it's going to draw upon a lot of things that we've already discussed, especially since this is the second day. But, so I'm going to cover 6 points. The first one will sound a little bit maybe like Economics 101 intro. I do wanted to get down to the basics of definitions and what the self-fulfilling prophecy actually is all about. I think we do need to be straightforward about that. Next, I'll look at an example of the media in worsening the crisis, which I'll go over very quickly because Steve has already talked about it. Then a counterexample of an example of the media's failure to report warning signals. Next, I want to think a little bit about should media regulating institutions intervene in a financial crisis in terms of putting stricter rules on how journalists should be reporting. Next, when are cases when journalists have been held accountable by the law for reporting supposedly mistakenly on a financial situation? And then I'll leave out some discussion questions for you all to continue. So let's do some intro to economics. This is going to sound very basic, but I do want to say this. So the main question here, I think, is that's interesting is that there are such delicate choices that journalists need to make when they're reporting on a financial crisis. So media reporting in times of severe economic crisis is a balance between the need to report on an urgent situation in order to trigger the public awareness that triggers policy response and industry response on one side, and then on the other side, the need to avoid further alarming the public and the business community, which can quickly spiral into worsening the crisis by virtue of the self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's the main question here. What do you do as a journalist? Do you report this because you need to and you want the government or the businesses, the banks to take action on it, or do you hold back because you know that everyone's going to withdraw their investments and the whole thing is going to collapse? So a little bit about the concept of self-fulfilling prophecy. You may know this, but the term was coined by the sociologist Robert Merton. The definition is, well, I've got two here, the process by which someone's expectations about a person or group leads to the fulfillment of those expectations. Or self-fulfilling prophecy is causing something to happen by believing it will occur. So it's very simple, but I think it's fascinating in all of this. The principle in finance is that successful investment in a financial market requires that each investor guess what other investors will do. So that's where the psychology comes in. George Soros talked about, perhaps other people as well, who work in the field have talked about reflexivity. So the term reflexivity describes this need to guess the intentions of others. And it's a circular relationship between the cause and effect of what's going on in